So let us continue over here, and in this lecture let us dive a little bit deeper about the classes, and we'll take a look on to the constructor about the classes. So I have created one class over here which is a class person. So just go and create it, and I have created a new file over here which is class underscore person. So if you are following along, just create the same class and the file. So we have a class person over here, and let us add some properties to this class. So class always has some properties. So what we will do is we will have a int, and we will just say a height. So every person has a height, and then we will have another one as let's say a double, and this double will be of a weight, right? So we have a height and a weight. And also let us set about the we have a height, weight, and the age, right? So it should be of also a int, and that should be of a age. And let us have a age of the int age. Okay, that should be fine. And let us have some functionality for this person class. So it has some methods, right? So we will create a void, and I'll just say do eat, right? So eat, so a person can eat, and we will have another function over here, or the method, the functionality. So I will have a void over here, and what it can do is do walk, right? So we have two functionality for this class person, which is to eat and do walk. And we also have three of the properties over here. So the three properties are of the height, weight, and the age. Currently it is giving us an error, which means that it must be initialized. So what we can do is we can add a let init or let, which means that I will initialize it later. So let us give a let and inform the compiler that we will initialize it later. Let, right? Let. Okay, so we got that error removed already. So now let us take a look about the default constructor. So let's go back to our, I think we'll go back to our, let us create a new file over here, and I will call it as main.dot, and this main.dot I will add a main function over here. So we have this, and we will initialize that, let's say a var, and we have a person, and that is of equals to a person class that we have created. And now if you go over here, so the class person, we have this person class over here, and if we go to the main, we have initialized this particular person class over here. And this is a default constructor. If you see that we are having a parenthesis over here, and this creates a new instance of the person and calls the default constructor. So if you go back to this class and add this particular default constructor person, right? And this is basically a default constructor. And if you want to see that this is doing something, print, and I'll just say a default constructor over here. So now if you actually go and run our main function over here, this will actually go and print that particular default constructor print statement. So let's go and run this one, and you can see that default constructor is just called. So we are just creating an instance of our person class, and when you are creating an instance of this particular person class, the default constructor is called by default, right? So we don't have to do anything over here to call the default constructor. By default it will just call whenever we create a new instance, it will create or call that particular default constructor. And now let us try to add the another constructor, which is a parameterized constructor. So basically we have previously learned about that one. So if you go over here, we have already created created a parameterized or the constructor. So we will go over here and let's create a person, and this person will take some of the constructor parameter. So I will just say int, right, height, and then I can just go and do something over here. Now you can see that it is giving us the error over here. The name unnamed constructor is already used, and we have to provide another constructor with a name. So basically, if you have one for the default constructor, all right, or the primary constructor or the default constructor, you can have only one, right? So this is already created, so you can create another constructor over here. Even in the Java, if you go over here, you have one constructor, and on the secondary constructor you can create a different constructor with a different parameter. So you can create a multiple constructor with a different parameter over here, right? So the parameter must be different, and but you can have a multiple constructor in the same way if you are coming back from the Java. But here we are not allowed to do so. So for that, what we have to do is we have to remove this, or else we have to create a name constructor, which we'll be taking a look on the another part. So what we do over here is we'll just add get the int and type it of the height, and here we'll just go and print out that particular whatever we are getting, and I'll just say height, which is of $sign, and the height that we are getting, sorry. And so that should be fine. And if we go back to the main file over here, it will give us an error. Now we need to provide that integer height over here. So let's provide 165 over here. And now if you go and run this function over here, you get a default constructor printed, and also the height is printed out for us, so which is actually doing over here. And so let's take a look about this is the parameterized constructor, and if you want to add more parameter, you can obviously do it. So we will just do a double over here, and that should be of a weight, right? And also we have another one, int of the, let's say, age, right? And now if you go back, we have to pass in all of those stuff. So second one is of the weight, let's say 56 point, let's say 50 something, right? And the another one age is of let's say 35. So we are passing all of those stuff. And now if you want to print out, you can just actually go and print out. So here it should be of a height is weight, and here it should be of the age. And here we will print out this weight, and here we'll print out the age. And if you go and run this and create a new instance, it will print out everything for us. So this is the parameterized constructor. And the next, you can also go and make it as a required or the named parameter over here that we previously learned on our basic about the classes. So how we created a named parameter over here. So you can do the same thing, but that's up to you. I'll just leave it as for now. The next is we will go over the constructor of a named constructor. So if I want to create another constructor, I can obviously do it. So it should be of a person and dot and the name. So you can just say SACO and the second, right? So person the second or any name. So this, you don't have to be specific to be a second or first. You can create your own name. It's up to you, right? So we have a second constructor over here. And now if you want to call that one, if I go over here, and I can just go and call that particular constructor. For that, let us create a new variable, and I'll just say var person, let's say second, which is equals to person dot second. I can call that constructor and pass it. And if I run it, that should run perfectly. And we are not getting any output from over here, the second person. If you want to add some output, you can just create a over here, and we'll just pass in our, let's say, print out something, and just print out our, not the default, it should be of a second constructor. Now if you go and run this, that should print out for us the second constructor. And if you want to add some parameter for the second constructor, you can obviously go and add. Let's just take in the height and width for now, and we don't want to get the age for this one. So now if I go and print out these two, I should get the printout from there, and I will have to pass in over here. So I need to pass in like a height and a weight over here, so that should be of let's say 160, and the height and the weight let us pass as the 60.2. so now if I go and run this again, then you should print out that particular secondary constructor for us, which has a height and the weight. Now what you can do is, whenever we are passing in that particular constructor parameter, we can also set the person class, whatever properties that we have, we can set the values, right? So here it is a let initialize this particular, and if you try to access this one, you will get an error, right? Because it is not initialized. So if I go and try to print out like let's say this, sorry, I need to access this something over here, so curly brace, and this sorry, I need to pass in the dollar. So this dot, I have to get the age over here, right? So this dot age, sorry, it should be the curly brace inside over here, and that should be the one. So if you try to go and run this one, and you should obviously get an error because that the person that age has not been initialized, the age has not been initialized. So that is the error that you will get over here, because it hasn't been initialized. We have mentioned it as late, and so we have to initialize before we can actually access that one. So how do we set that one? Is whenever we call the default constructor, what we want to do is we want to initialize it. So I can just say this dot and the age is of equals to the age that we are getting, right? And also if I want to set for this height and the width, so I can do the same thing. So just duplicate this line, and I have for the height, and I get it from the height over here, and this is of the width, and I get it from the width. So don't get confused about the this over here. This basically means this particular object or the person class, and this height is coming from this parameter, and this dot height is coming from this particular object or the person class, and it doesn't have to do anything with this particular parameter. So parameters that we are getting is over here, right, on the right hand side, each of our parameter, and these are the class properties. So now if you go and run this one, and you should not get that particular error because we have already set the values over here. So now if you want to get the properties value, you can obviously get it over here, right? So that should be of the height, this dot the height that we have, and also the width that we have. And also you can also access directly from here, like if I go over here and set the person dot, if I want to get the age, I can get it right? And if I can set it to var age over here, and age which is of equals to person dot age, and if you want to print out something like let's say object age, and if you want to print out that one $age, then you can print it out over here. Just run this one and you should see the particular printout. So let's go over here, and this is default constructor first called, and then our values are set up, and then after we set up our object, then we are printing the object age of 35, and then again the secondary constructor is created and the values are set over there. So you can also do the same thing for this particular. You can get all of this and just set it over here, and then the same thing that you can just go and print out this one. So it's the same thing, right? So nothing difference over there. Just remove that one. That should be fine. Then you can just go and run and test it out if everything is working fine. So that's all about the constructor in the Dart and the Flutter. So we will meet up on the next one. Till then, have a great day.